The bright stage lights were warm. They bounced off the glass walls and shimmered across the polished floor like stars scattered on water. It was a day Sundar Pichai would never forget, though he had no idea of that when he woke up that morning. He had been through hundreds of events, interviews, and speeches, but this one felt different. It was not about numbers, or data, or the future of artificial intelligence. It was about people. And somewhere deep inside, something whispered that today, the past would come knocking. He adjusted his suit, took a slow breath, and looked around at the massive crowd seated in front of him. Journalists, students, ministers, business leaders, I was fixed on the stage. But Sundar's mind wasn't focused on them. He was thinking of his father's bicycle, the smell of hot tea in steel cups, the narrow streets of Chennai, and his mother's tired hands stirring rice as she hummed to herself. Prime Minister Narendra Modi walked on stage with his usual calm strength. The crowd clapped, cameras flashed. Sundar stood beside him, smiling, composed, respectful. He had learned long ago how to stay calm in any moment. But no training in the world could have prepared him for what happened next. Modi did not start with policy. He did not talk about technology or India's global power. Instead, his voice softened, and he looked directly at Sundar. Before we speak of Google, he said, I want to speak of a woman who never touched a computer, but who shaped the man standing beside me. A hush fell over the hall. Her name, Modi said gently, was Lakshmi Pichai. Sundar froze. He did not expect that name to be spoken. Not here, not now. It was the name of the woman who had cooked for neighbors when they couldn't afford food. The woman who read Tamil poetry by candlelight and whispered dreams into his ears when the city around them was asleep. It was the name of the mother he lost before he could bring her to America, before he could show her the world she had imagined for him. Modi continued. Lakshmi Pichai lived with grace. She raised her son with values stronger than steel. She believed in education when there was no money. She believed in kindness when there was only struggle. And today, we honor her. Sundar tried to speak, but the words stuck. His throat closed. The applause began to rise, but he could not hear it. It was as if everything around him blurred, the sounds, the lights, the crowd. He could only see her. He saw her standing by the old window, her sari fluttering in the hot wind, her eyes tired but proud. He remembered the night she sold her gold bangles, quietly so he could pay for a book. He remembered her sitting alone in the dark when the power cut off, refusing to light the last candle because you need it to study, Kana. And now, her name was being spoken on one of the biggest stages in the world. He bowed his head. His shoulders trembled, and slowly, he broke down. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a quiet breaking, like ice melting in warm hands. The cameras tried to stay respectful. The Prime Minister paused, giving Sundar a moment. The crowd did not cheer. They did not move. It was as if everyone understood the weight of that moment. When Sundar finally raised his head, there were tears on his cheeks, but his eyes were steady. He whispered, "Thank you," his voice barely audible. But it was not to the Prime Minister. It was to her, to the woman who had been gone for years, but who had just come alive again in front of the whole world. From that point on, the speech didn't matter. What mattered was what came after. People began sharing her name online. Stories appeared. Neighbors from the past posted old memories. A woman who had once borrowed rice from Lakshmi Pichai wrote, "She gave me food before she ate herself." Another said, "She used to walk with Sundar to school, carrying his books so he could read while walking." The world was curious now, not just about the CEO of Google, but about the mother who had made him, and Sundar. He went back to his hotel room and sat by the window for hours. He didn't look at his phone. He didn't check his email. He just stared at the stars, wondering if somewhere, somehow, she could see what had happened. He whispered again, "Amma, They know your name now. But deep down, he knew that this was just the beginning. Because when the past is honored, it does not stay in the past. It begins to move, to stir, to change lives. Again, and hers was a life that still had so much to teach the world. The morning after the tribute, Sundar sat quietly in his hotel room. Sunlight poured in through the wide windows, but it felt distant, like it didn't belong in the same world where his mother's name had just echoed across a global stage. He had not slept. The night passed in silence, his mind replaying every word, every pause, every memory. There were meetings waiting, emails building, responsibilities pulling him, but none of it mattered in that moment. On the bedside table, his phone buzzed. Not from Google, not from Silicon Valley. It was a message from someone he hadn't heard from in over 15 years. It said, "I saw the speech. I have something that belongs to you. Meet me if you can. It's about your mother." The name below the message made his heart skip at VAISH. NAVI. The girl from the house next door in Chennai. The one who used to sit with Lakshmi Pichai during summer afternoons, listening to her read poetry. She had been like a little sister to him, always curious, always watching. But after he left India, they had lost touch. Life had moved fast. Years passed. And now, out of nowhere, she was reaching out. He replied with one word, "Where?" They met in a quiet park in Delhi. Sundar came alone, wearing simple clothes, no security. Vaishnav was already sitting on a bench, holding a small wooden box in her hands. When she looked up, her eyes filled with tears. "You still look like her," she whispered. He didn't know what to say. He just sat beside her, and for a moment, they both watched the birds move across the sky in silence. Then she handed him the box. "Your mother gave this to me before she passed," Vaishnav said. "She told me to give it to you, but only when the world finally saw her. Only when they knew her name. I think that moment has come." Sundar looked at the box. It was worn, faded at the corners, but carefully wrapped in a white cloth. His hands trembled slightly as he opened it. Inside were old letters, dozens of them each, one written in his mother's delicate handwriting. Some were dated when he was just a boy, some when he had left for the US, and some after he picked up the top letter, unfolded it slowly. The words were simple, honest, full of love. "Dear Kenna, if you are reading this, it means I am not with you anymore. But my love is." Each letter carried a moment frozen in time. In one, she described how she waited for the postman every morning, hoping for a letter from America. In another, she shared a recipe for his favorite dish, writing, "I know you can't cook, but maybe you will try just once." And then there was one that stopped him cold. "I have a feeling that one day, someone will speak your name in a way that honors me too. And if they do, promise me you will not hide your tears. Show them you came from love." Sundar closed his eyes. How did she always know? Vaishnavi smiled through tears. She never stopped writing. She said words were her way of holding you. They spent the rest of the afternoon reading letters, laughing softly, crying openly. Each note was a memory, a story, a piece of the woman who had built his future with her bare hands and boundless hope. But near the bottom of the box was something else, a photograph. It was old, faded, slightly torn. It showed Sundar as a child, standing barefoot in front of their tiny home. Beside him stood Lakshmi, one hand on his shoulder, the other holding a chalkboard with 3 simple words written in Tamil: "He will lead." He stared at it for a long time, not because of what was written, but because he remembered that day. It was the day he told her he wanted to be an engineer, and she had written those words, not as a prediction, but as a promise. He never knew she kept the photo. Vaishnavi said softly, "She believed in you before anyone else did, and now the world does too." But Sundar didn't feel powerful in that moment. He felt like a child again, a child who missed his mother, a child who had everything, except her. And yet, somehow, through these letters, through this box, through the people she had quietly touched, she was still here, still guiding him, still whispering truths into his soul. As the sun began to set, Sundar stood up. "Thank you," he said. Vasnavi nodded. "There's one more thing." She pulled out a small folded paper. "A man came to our house years ago. Said he knew Lakshmi. Said he was her student, long ago. He left this note. Said it might matter someday." Sundar opened it. Inside was a name he had never heard before, and a message. "She once saved my life with a single sentence. If you ever want to know what it was, come find me." The name at the bottom read, Krishna Dev, and with that, the mystery deepened. Who was this man? What sentence had Lakshmi said that changed someone's life? Why had he waited all these years? Sundar looked at the note, the photo, the letters. His heart beat faster. He had honored his mother, but now, he would uncover the parts of her life he never knew, and what he would find would change everything. The plane ride to Calcutta was quiet. Sundar didn't touch his laptop. He didn't read. He just stared out the window, the small piece of paper still in his hand. The name Krishna Dev, circling in his mind like an unanswered question. He had no meetings scheduled, no cameras following him. This trip wasn't for business. It was for something deeper, something personal. His mother had left behind more than love. She had left behind impact silent, strong, and hidden in the lives of others. When the plane landed, the sky was gray, the air warm with the smell of rain. Sundar took a cab to an address, scribbled on the back of the note. It was a small bookstore tucked between two tea stalls. Its sign faded, the door slightly crooked. Inside, the air smelled like old paper and ink. The walls were lined with books, stacked to the ceiling. A bell rang softly as he entered. An old man stood behind the counter, wearing thick glasses and a shawl, even though it was not cold. He looked up slowly. "You came," the man said, his voice calm but filled with something heavy. "Are you Krishna Dev?" Sundar asked. The man nodded. "I'm Lakshmi Pichai's son." Silence. Then, a gentle smile spread across the old man's face. "I know." Sundar blinked, surprised. How? Because only her son would come looking for a sentence. They sat at a wooden table in the back, surrounded by books with torn pages and worn covers. Krishna poured them both a cup of strong tea. "Your mother," he began, "was not just a woman. She was a storm wrapped in silence." Sundar listened, heart steady, eyes locked on the man's every word. "I met her when I was 16. I was a student with no future. My father drank. My brother was in jail. I was about to leave school. I believed I was worthless." He paused, looking at his tea. "Then one day, your mother came to our class to substitute for a teacher who had fallen sick. I don't remember the lesson, but I remember what happened after." He looked up, eyes glassy. "She saw me alone after school, packing my things slowly. I thought she would walk past, but she sat beside me." Krishna's hands trembled slightly. She said, "Do you know how diamonds are made?" I said no. She said, "They are just black stones, until the earth squeezes them for 1,000 years. Pressure makes them shine." He took a deep breath. Then, she touched my shoulder and said, "You are under pressure now, but I see the shine in you. Don't leave school. Shine for me." He wiped his eyes. No one had ever said that to me. No one had ever seen anything in me. I stayed. I studied. I became a teacher, and then a writer. All because of one sentence. Sundar felt his throat tighten. His mother had said something so simple, yet it had lit a fire in someone who had nearly given up. "She saved me," Krishna said softly, "and I was just one of many." He stood up and walked to a shelf, pulled out a thin notebook. "These are letters from students who knew her, people whose lives changed because of her words. She may not have had a stage, but she had power, real power." Sundar opened the notebook. Stories poured out. A girl who chose science because Lakshmi gave her a book. A boy who stopped stealing after Lakshmi caught him and said, "You're not a thief. You're lost. Let me help you find your way." A woman who became a nurse because Lakshmi held her hand when no one else would. Every story carried the same truth. Lakshmi Pichai saw people not as they were, but as they could be. She made others believe, Krishna said. And now, you do too. Sundar looked up. What do you mean? Krishna smiled. You are her sentence now. Her living words. When people see you, they see what belief can build. Sundar had never thought of himself that way. He always saw his success as hard work, timing, luck. But maybe it was also her voice in his head, her values in his decisions, her strength in his steps. I want the world to know her, Sundar said quietly. Krishna nodded. Then don't tell them about her. Show them who she was. Through you. The next day, Sundar called his team. He didn't ask for data or numbers. He asked them to build something. A small online archive. Simple, clean, filled with letters, photos, memories of people like Krishna. A place where anyone could upload their stories of those who changed their lives silently. A digital tribute to invisible heroes. And at the top of the page, he wrote, "This is for Lakshmi Pichai, and for every mother, teacher, neighbor, and stranger who gave someone hope without asking for anything in return." It was launched quietly, but within hours, it exploded. Thousands of stories came pouring in, not just about Lakshmi, but about others. The janitor who taught a child to read, the uncle who gave away his coat in winter, the bus driver who waited every day for a sick boy. The world was full of silent heroes, and now, their stories were being told. And somewhere in the middle of it all, one photo stood out, a black and white image of a woman in a cotton sari, sitting in a chair, smiling softly. Lakshmi Pichai, mother of a CEO, but more than that, mother of light. It had only been a week since Sundar launched the tribute page in his mother's name. Thousands of stories had flooded in from across India, then from around the world. News channels picked it up. Influencers shared their own stories. Students, doctors, workers, and mothers all posted photos and letters of people who had shaped them quietly, without fame, without reward. But Sundar didn't want it to end with a website. He knew his mother had taught without a chalkboard. She had taught through food, silence, books, comfort, and fierce honesty. So he wanted to create something that could carry her spirit, not as a product, not as a campaign, but as a living space where stories could turn into action. He sat with his closest team. They were used to working on high-level tech strategies, but today, Sundar's voice was different, calm, emotional, focused. "I want to build a classroom," he said. His team stared, confused. "Not a school," Sundar clarified. "A classroom without walls. Something anyone, anywhere can enter. Not to learn math or coding, but to learn values." Someone asked gently, "Values?" Sundar nodded. "The things my mother taught me. Kindness, resilience, honesty, listening, giving." A young woman from the team leaned forward, like a digital space for human lessons. "Exactly," Sundar said. "Lessons that don't expire. Things that hold us together, even when everything else falls apart." The room was quiet. Then one by one, the team began to speak. Ideas flowed. Platforms, video tools, story-sharing features, voice messages from elders, interactive books. Everything was simple, not flashy, not corporate. It felt human. They called it the Lakshmi Room, an app, free for everyone, available in every major language. Each day, it opened with a story, sometimes a mother's voice reading a poem, sometimes a rickshaw driver telling how a stranger helped him during a flood, sometimes just a child describing how his grandfather taught him to stand up after falling. And at the end of every story, One simple question appeared. Who shaped you? People could answer with their own stories. They could send messages of thanks to old teachers, or donate a book in someone's name, or offer time to teach. Someone who had no teacher. The app went live. No promotion, no ads, just a soft whisper across social media. And yet, in 3 days, over 1 million people downloaded it. Messages poured in from villages, cities, deserts, and hills. One boy in Ladakh wrote, "I never knew my story mattered until I saw others like me." An old woman in Kerala sent a voice note saying, "I taught for 30 years. Today, a student wrote to me through your app. I cried." A truck driver in Pakistan shared a story about his sister, saying, "We fight, but she saved my life once. I want her to know." Stories crossed borders. People realized that kindness speaks the same language everywhere. One morning, Sundar received a message that stopped him in his tracks. It was from a woman named Amrita, in a small town in Madhya Pradesh. Her message was short. "Your mother helped my mother when I was a baby. You don't know me, but I owe her my life." Curious, Sundar called her. The woman sounded shy at first. Soft voice, clear Hindi. She said she had posted her story on the app, but it hadn't been approved yet. "Tell me now," Sundar said gently. Amrita began. "My mother was 17 when she gave birth to me. My father had left. We were living near your old house. One night, my mother fell very sick. She had no one." Sundar felt his breath slow. "Your mother found her outside, helped her, brought her inside, fed her, stayed up all night with her, gave her her own medicine. When my mother got better, she said, 'That woman is the reason you are alive.'" Amrita paused. "I grew up hearing your mother's name. I didn't know who you were until last week. When I saw the tribute, I broke down." Sundar felt his heart ache. His mother had never told him, not once. How many more moments had she carried quietly? How many lives had she touched in silence? He thanked Amrita, and after the call, he sat by the window for a long time. It began to rain, soft, steady rain, and in that moment, he realized something that shook him. He had spent years chasing answers in code, logic, algorithms, but the clearest truth he ever knew had come from a woman who never left her city, who never held a degree, who never asked for recognition. Yet she had built something bigger than any app, bigger than any platform. She had built people, and now, they were rising, they were speaking, they were sharing, they were healing, across oceans, across languages, across generations. Because love, when planted right, grows forever. And Lakshmi Pichai had planted love like seeds in every step she took. It had been nearly 1 month since the world first heard Lakshmi Pichai's name. What started with a tribute on stage had grown into something far greater. Millions had downloaded the Lakshmi Room app. Children were teaching their parents how to upload stories. Old friends were reconnecting. Long-forgotten teachers were receiving thank you letters from students they hadn't seen in decades. But something unexpected was happening to Dot. Governments began to notice. School boards started asking how they could use the Lakshmi Room in classrooms. Social workers in remote villages began playing the stories on loudspeakers. But the biggest surprise came from a place Sundar never expected. An old college in Chennai, one that had once rejected his application, now invited him to speak, not as a tech leader, not as a guest, but as the son of Lakshmi Pichai. The email read, "We believe it is time we honor the woman who shaped one of the world's greatest minds. We would like to name our new learning center after her. If you accept, please come and unveil it." Sundar stared at the screen for a long time. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then he typed, "Yes, I will come, but only if we invite everyone." Who knew her? Not just the leaders, not just the professors, everyone. A few days later, he landed in Chennai. It was late afternoon, and the air was thick with memory. The smells, the sounds, the rhythm of the city, it all came rushing back. He didn't take a luxury car. He walked past the old tea stalls, past the alley where he used to play cricket with a plastic bat, past the tiny grocery shop where his mother once argued fiercely to save 5 rupees on rice. His feet moved on their own, leading him to a narrow lane lined with aging homes, and there it was, the house where he had grown up. Its walls were now chipped, the paint had faded. The balcony leaned slightly forward, as if still listening to the voices of children below. He stood at the gate for a long time, his hand resting on the iron latch. A voice called out behind him, "Sundar." He turned. It was Mr. Anand, their old neighbor. He was thinner now, slower, but his eyes lit up with the same kindness. "I told them you'd come back someday," Mr. Anand said, smiling. They sat on the small bench outside the house. No cameras, no noise, just memories between them. "She used to sing here every evening," Mr. Anand said. Not loudly, just softly, for herself. Sundar closed his eyes. He could almost hear her voice again, low, gentle, humming through the dusk. "She taught me to read," Mr. Anand said suddenly. "I never told you." Sundar looked at him, stunned. "I was ashamed. I was 50 years old, couldn't read a signboard. One night, she sat with me under the streetlight and said, 'Let's start with your name.' We practiced every night, for 3 weeks. His voice cracked. "I signed my first paper, because of her. I still keep that pen." He pulled it from his pocket, an old blue pen, worn at the edges. Sundar held it for a moment. It felt heavier than gold. Later that evening, the event began. People gathered from all corners of the city, not just dignitaries and scholars but old shopkeepers, retired teachers, rickshaw drivers, and neighbors who remembered Lakshmi, not as the mother of Sundar Pichai, but as herself. A woman in a simple cotton sari stepped onto the stage. Her name was Nalini. She said, "I cleaned houses for 30 years. Lakshmi Amma never let me leave without a meal." She said, "No one works in my house with an empty stomach." She treated me like her sister. And today, I am proud to see her name shining like the sun. The crowd clapped, not out of duty, but out of love. Next came a young man who had grown up in a broken home. He said, "She once told me I wasn't broken, just bruised, and bruises heal." That sentence saved me. As Sundar watched, story after story poured out, some funny, some painful, all true. Then the curtain dropped. Behind it stood a simple plaque on the new building's wall. It read, "The Lakshmi Pichai Center for Quiet Courage," and below it, just 5 words, "Built by love." Not noise. Sundar walked up to the plaque and touched it gently. This building had no walls filled with marble or glass, but it had something. Stronger stories. After the ceremony, an old woman approached him. She was holding a photograph. "Your mother gave me this," she said. Sundar took the photo. It was a picture of Lakshmi, standing beside a tree, smiling softly, her hand resting on the shoulder of a small boy. "That boy is my son," the woman said. "He died young. But that photo reminds me of the only time I saw him truly happy." Tears welled in Sundar's eyes. She added, "Your mother carried our pain like it was hers, and gave us peace in return." That night, Sundar returned to his hotel, sat at the desk, and wrote in his notebook. He didn't write about tech. He didn't write about work. He wrote about people, about stories, about how the quietest lives often leave the loudest echoes, and for the first time in his life, he realized something deeply personal. His success was not the story. His story was a doorway, a way to honor the person who built him, not with money or power, but with silence, strength, and endless belief. He whispered into the night, "Amma, they don't just know your name now, they remember your heart." The sun rose slowly over Chennai, painting the city with gold. Sundar stood at the edge of the old railway bridge near his childhood home. It was quiet there, just like he remembered. Trains still passed below, with the same rattle and hum. The same wind carried the scent of jasmine and dust. He held one last letter from the box Vaishnavi had given him. It was the only one he hadn't read yet. The envelope had just one word on it. Someday. He had saved it for the right moment. And now, after the tribute, after the center, after hearing the stories of strangers who felt like family, he knew this was that moment. He opened the envelope slowly, carefully, like it might tear the air around him. Inside was a single page, her handwriting, calm and graceful. It said, "My dearest Kanna, if you are reading this, then the world knows something about me. But more importantly, they know something about you. They know that you are more than your job, more than your title, more than the machines you build or the speeches you give. They know that you come from love, and that, Kanna, is the most powerful thing any human can carry." Sundar sat on the edge of the bridge, reading each word slowly. "You will build many things in your life, but don't forget to build people too. Build them with your time, build them with your patience, build them with your listening. I never had a building named after me. I never stood on a stage, but I had a life full of meaning, because I helped others believe in themselves." Her words sank into him like roots finding soil. If you become successful, remember to become soft. If you rise, remember to reach down. And if the world ever forgets what matters, remind them with how you treat the ones who cannot give you anything back. That is your real work. Not the screens, not the meetings. The people, always, always the people with love that never ends. He pressed the letter to his chest and closed his eyes. A few hours later, Sundar walked into a small school in the outskirts of the city. No press, no announcement. He had found it through one of the stories on the Lakshmi Room app. A young teacher there had written about his mother, saying her story had inspired his entire class. When Sundar entered the classroom, the children stared in silence. Then, one by one, they smiled. He sat with them on the floor. He asked their names. He listened to their dreams. A girl said she wanted to be a pilot. A boy said he wanted to fix things. Another child said she didn't know what she wanted to be, but she wanted to help people smile. Sundar looked around at their eyes, bright, fearless, alive. He reached into his bag and pulled out something wrapped in a cloth. He opened it gently. It was the old chalkboard from the photograph he had found in the box, the same one his mother had held beside him when he was just a boy. 3 words still faintly visible. "He will lead." He handed it to the teacher. "Hang this in your class," he said. "But change the words if you want. Write what your students need to see." The teacher nodded, eyes filled with emotion. Before leaving, Sundar wrote something on the classroom wall with a piece of chalk. Just one sentence. "You matter more than you know." Then he walked out into the warm air, the sound of laughter. Behind him, in the weeks that followed, the Lakshmi Room project expanded into libraries, bus stations, and homes for the elderly. People created story corners, where anyone could come and share moments that shaped them. Students began interviewing their grandparents. Young adults started volunteer circles. Neighbors who never spoke started telling stories over cups of tea. Something beautiful was happening. The world wasn't becoming louder. It was becoming closer, and at the center of it all was one name, Lakshmi Pichai, a woman who had never left her street, but whose spirit now moved across nations. Sundar kept traveling, not for meetings, not for deals, but for people, to listen, to sit, to give what his mother had once given him, a safe space to grow, a belief that he mattered. One evening, as he sat quietly under a tree, a small girl approached him. She said, "Are you the Google man?" He smiled. "I guess so." She held out a folded paper. He opened it. It said, in crayon, "Thank you for making my teacher feel important." He blinked fast, heart swelling. "She says she matters now," the girl added. He nodded and said softly, "She always did." As the sun dipped low, turning the sky into a river of gold, Sundar understood the final truth of his journey. Technology can connect us, but love transforms us. And sometimes, the greatest legacy is not in what we create, but in who we lift along the way. Lakshmi Pichai did not build a company, she built a life, and through her son, and through the millions she quietly touched, she gave the world something it needed most: remembrance, dignity, hope, and the courage to live gently. A year had passed. The world had changed, not with noise, but with stories. The Lakshmi Room had reached over 50 countries. People of all ages and walks of life were sharing their small moments of kindness, sacrifice, and hope. But Sundar knew something still remained, a piece of her story that hadn't been completed. Not online, not in code, but in the real world, where footsteps echo and memories breathe. He stood once again in Chennai, this time in the place he had avoided for many years, the cemetery. His mother had been buried in a simple grave with no grand marker, no headline, just a small stone that read, Lakshmi, beloved. That was it. No last name, no title, no story, just a whisper, and for a long time, he had accepted that, but not anymore. Today was the anniversary of the tribute, the day her name had first been spoken on stage, before the world, and Sundar wanted to do something that would last beyond apps and news cycles. He held a bouquet of jasmine. It had been her favorite, and beside him stood not security, not press, but people. The neighbors who once borrowed salt from her kitchen. Students she once guided with silent glances. Young girls now working in hospitals, schools, farms, all saying they had been shaped by someone who believed in them first. Even Krishnadev, the old bookstore owner, had come. And Vaishnavi stood by Sundar's side, her eyes shining with tears. They were all there, not to mourn, but to honor. A local artisan stepped forward with a cloth-wrapped plaque. Sundar helped him unwrap it. Beneath the old gravestone, they fixed a new piece of polished stone. It read, Lakshmi, picky mother, teacher, light. She lifted lives without lifting her voice. There was no applause, no music, only silence. But it was the kind of silence that holds respect. Sundar placed the flowers gently at the base. He then turned to face the group. His voice was soft, but steady. My mother used to say, the smallest candle can light up the darkest room. He paused, letting the moment breathe. She lit up lives not with power, but with presence, not with wealth, but with wisdom, not with speeches, but with silence. His voice broke slightly. And now, it's our turn to carry that light. The people around him nodded. Some were crying, some just stood still, but all of them felt the weight and the warmth of what was happening, because this was not a funeral, it was a beginning. Sundar reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded cloth. That it was the same chalkboard from his childhood, the one with the fading words, "He will lead." He placed it carefully beside her grave, and beneath it, he wrote a new message with white chalk, "Because of her, we all lead." That night, Sundar returned to his hotel. He opened the Lakshmi Room app. He scrolled past thousands of stories, each more beautiful than the last dot, and then he found one that made him stop. It had just been uploaded. No name, no photo, just one line. I didn't know her, but because of her, I forgave my father today. He stared at the screen. His hand slowly reached up and touched his heart, because in that moment, he finally understood the full meaning of legacy. It's not about what we leave behind. It is about who we become, and who we help others become. As the screen dimmed, he whispered into the quiet room, "Thank you, Amma, for everything." Then he turned off the light, closed his eyes, and let the night carry him into sleep, not with sorrow, but with peace, because her story had not ended. It had only just begun.